this film was the best in the series since the original. What do you think? Absolutely fantastic. And I'm real excited about this panel to go into the nuts and bolts of how that film was made. And we have some very special guests from Halloween 2018 with us today, starting with the actress who played Dana in the film, who was a great reason not to stop at roadside bathrooms. Let's give it up for Rhian Rees, Dana from Halloween. Okay, he played Julian in the film, and I don't know, I thought he stole the movie. Let's give it up for Jabril Natambu.
He's not here.
Oh, actually, Jabril is not with us. Never mind. he still was great in the film. Okay, he created the new Michael Myers mask. I think it's the best one ever. He did all the great gore effects in the film, and he was also his own victim in the film. Let's give it up for Christopher Nelson, Oscar-winning makeup effects artist. And last but not least, he is the face of fear. He is the new shape. Give it up for James Jude Courtney. Chris?
No.
So were you guys surprised by the astounding success of the film? Biggest opening ever for, I think, an R-rated horror movie after It. Huge box office. Biggest, I think it's made more than all the other Halloween movies combined.
Honestly, you know, if I were being humble and it were about me, I would say, oh, we're so surprised. But because it's not about me, because we worked with guys like Chris Nelson and David Green and Danny McBride and Jamie Lee and Rhiannon. I mean, there were so many talented people that came together, and Chris and I would sit in the trailer every morning. I remember Chris saying several times, like, dude, this is why I do what I do. This is why I do what I do. And we all felt the same way. So it was just one of those moments where, you know, we were just such in perfect harmony. So I think the natural outgrowth of that is something like you just mentioned.
And Chris, what are your thoughts when you got the job to recreate the iconic mask, to do the kills, and also play a role in the film?
I was, of course, thrilled. I couldn't believe it, because it was like a dream come true. Of all the things that I've done and been, this was like kind of like a big full circle thing, because Halloween, the original Halloween, made such an impression on me when I was a kid. I saw it when it opened in '78, and everything changed, and changed for cinema as well. So I owe it to Ryan Turk, you know, got me on this gig and suggested me, and it was a dream come true. I couldn't believe it, and I wasn't really surprised. I knew it would do well. As we were shooting it, we would kind of talk about, how do you think it's going to do? You think it's going to? You think people will go see it? And as it progressed, and we saw how it was turning out and how James' performance was, and everybody involved in it, we knew it was going to be. I thought it was going to be good. We knew it was going to do fairly well, but I had no idea it would do as well as it did, which is great. So.
What kind of marching orders were you given in the creation of the mask, of the shape?
David, and everybody involved at Blumhouse and Universal, everything, and mostly David, and the direction was we just needed to bring it back and capture the essence of what the first one did, or at least try, and not put our own spin on it, or try not to put too much of our own spin on it, to try to go back to what that silhouette and why everyone responded to that mask. And although it's not exactly like that mask, it's a little different and stuff, but again, it was to capture that, and the mask is one thing, and then the guy that you put in it, you know, James took it the rest of the way. The mask is halfway, and the other half of it is the man who plays the shape, and James, I think, nailed it. I think he did an amazing job ever since the first one, so.
And Rhian, could you talk about your part in the saga and shooting your suspenseful death scene in that real seedy bathroom?
Yeah, well, it was just absolutely gross, the bathroom. Even though it was on a soundstage, they had such a great art department that everything looked super realistic. So that's one of my worst nightmares. Plus, you add evil incarnate into that situation, and it's pretty scary, really. It's my worst nightmares at the best of times, alone with Michael Myers.
Yeah, how was it working with James here? And I mean, did you isolate yourselves from each other before you shot that scene to add to the horror, or were you buddy going in?
We'd met really briefly. We'd had a few chats, and I just thought, oh, he's a really sweet bloke. It might be quite hard to be terrified of him when it comes to the scene. But as soon as he got into character and got into his costume, and I was trapped behind that toilet door, it came quite naturally. His footsteps were scary, but everything else, it was bound to happen, really. It was like a tsunami of fear.
James, how did the workload break down between you and original Shape actor Nick Castle? Because two, obviously, actors are credited in this film. How did you guys divide the work? How did that wind up falling?
Well, Nick came in on the third week, and when we met, we became fast friends. I mean, he's the most wonderful human being on the planet, and he's so highly creative and intelligent and funny and self-deprecating and just an amazing human being. So we talked about it. He was going to do a scene, maybe two. So we talked about it, and we were like, well, what we really want to do is have a scene where we inhabit the same space, where he and I are in the same scene, and Nick gets to, metaphorically pass the torch on 40 years later. And so it happened that they gave us what we wanted. And so in the scene where Jamie pulls up to the house and you see the shape up in the window, that's Nick. But in that very same scene, when she shoots and the window breaks, that's me in the mirror. That's me in the mirror, because the projectile they shot was about 1.5 feet behind me and about 6 inches from my head. So it's not a position you want to put Nick in. It's a position I love to be in. So it was really beautiful because we got to inhabit that space together. Other than that, Nick hung out and and partied his ass off, and that's what he was being Nick Castle. And it was awesome, and I did everything else. And Nick, Nick was really supportive. We never talked about the character. We never talked about movement or anything. It was, but it was very clear. It was really wonderful meeting him, because my approach to creating that character was to watch the first one time, and all I wanted to do was capture the essence of what Nick had created. And there was a moment where I captured that essence when in a very quick scene where he's walking camera left to camera right in the backyard. And inside I went, I got it. I got the energy that he had created so intuitively. And after that, I never thought about it again. It was just natural, it was in me. And so it was so wonderful to meet the man who had so intuitively created that. And then we just had a lot of fun.
What else did the director, David Green, give to you as motivation for the character?
Well, after I was hired, he called me and he said, so I was thinking he should move very cat-like. And I was like, well, I've got a cat in my lap. And I studied my cat's movement for, when I played their Kinderstode in Buffy. I happen to think cats are the perfect hunting, killing machines. So yeah, I agree. And that was about all the direction he ever gave me. I mean, that was it. It was, by the time they hired me, they already knew they wanted me. I had somehow already embraced the energy of it. So at that point in the game, the direction that David gave me is, and this was so much fun. I stopped even looking at the call sheets in the morning. I didn't know what scenes we were shooting. I didn't know, because I didn't have dialogue to make sure I knew. What the important thing for me was to be in that space, to be able to drop into that place inside me, which is definitely a place, a space. And so the fun part was, okay, the stunt coordinator, Ron Hutchinson, or David, or Attila, the first AD, would come up and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, this, and this, and this. Great. So here are your marks, boom, we worked that all out. But then, as cameras rolling, then David would go, oh, Jimmy, try this. Ooh, how about, so it was like kids playing in the sandbox. So we tried different things, and we got to play, and I got to just, with no mental process at all, just react to constantly to these shifting realities, and so it was a really, really amazing experience.
Chris, this film has an enormous number of kills, great gore set pieces. Which was your favorite? And give us some background on how that scene was shot.
I'd have to say my favorite, and I don't know if you really see it very well in the movie, was the character, the guy who's climbing on the fence, and Jim comes up, stabs him in the back, and he gets impaled through his jaw, and he's hanging there bleeding. And initially we were going to build a really elaborate effect of him going up and then comping it with a really realistic dummy with an armature in it that moved, that we were going to actually try to shoot to see him actually come down and get impaled onto the fence and that whole thing, and blood and everything. And it was very elaborate. And then we realized that we really didn't have the time and the budget, but how do we do it? And that's my favorite one. I wish we would have seen it, but that kill was based on an image that David Gordon Green was obsessed with, an actual real picture of a kid who was climbing a fence, just like that, and he slipped and impaled himself. And he had this photo, and I remember him emailing me the photo going, "I want to do this. Can we do this?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, we can do that. That'd be amazing." And we were both just obsessed with this. And the kid didn't die, he lived there or anything, but it's just this huge fence post stuck through this guy's jaw sticking out, and we were both just obsessed with it. So we really wanted to recreate that. But unfortunately, on that day, I think we were running behind, and we were shooting nights. It was like 4:30 in the morning, and we needed an hour to do the makeup and rig it, and we were running out of time because we had to wrap at like 5 or 5:30 in the morning, and it was like hurry, and so we rushed back to the trailer. We whipped the makeup out in like 30 minutes, and it was supposed to take an hour, and then we had to get back, and then it started raining, and we had to hook them up to the fence and harness them, and then get this thing up and get the blood pump up and everything, and we had to speed through it. Unfortunately, I don't think we were able to cover it or shoot it the way we really wanted to, but I think it's pretty effective. I would like to have seen more of it, but I thought it was effective, and we accomplished it. But that's my favorite, I think.
What was it like working with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Oh, is this for me? Just wonderful. She was such a trooper. She came onto set pretty early on, dressed as Laurie Strode, which was really cool because we just got used to her as Laurie instead of Jamie. So it made us very comfortable to slip into characters when we came to the interviewing scene.
Hey, Chris?
I thought it's Jamie Lee Curtis, man. I was like, what do you say? You're like, oh, she's such a badass, and she's such a generous woman and a smart woman, and knows cinema and knows movies and knows filmmaking. And one thing, when I heard that she was coming back and we were doing the movie, I was curious of how she was going to show up and approach revisiting this character yet again. And I was so pleasantly surprised that she was fully just embraced it with the love that she put into it when she created it, and was 110% into it and behind the filmmakers and behind all the other actors and everybody on the crew. And she wanted, I think, didn't she have a thing where the first day she had everybody wear a name tag? It said she wanted the whole crew to wear a name tag so she could learn everyone's names.
Yeah, and I think she had I am Laurie Strode, and she had everyone wear that tag that said I am Laurie Strode. So we tapped into our inner generational trauma, so we all felt on board.
Yeah, she was great. I love
Nice. Yeah, she, when I met her outside the trailer, she came up and introduced herself, very businesslike, and was kind of cold. And so, not in an offensive way, but I was like, I immediately got it. I was like, she and I are doing this dance. And so I chose to give her all the space that she needed. So I made it a point not to speak to her. The first night we worked together, when I got shot in the shoulder, when she shot me from behind in the shoulder, we hugged each other at the end of the evening, but I didn't speak to her for another week. And I just wanted to give her space. And then one morning we were in the hair trailer, And she gets up, and we were at opposite ends of the trailer, and she gets up and marches down, and she goes, okay, so about this fight. And then we just went into talking about this big fight we were going to have, this big fight scene, which didn't end up in the final cut, which was bad to the bone, though. But from that point, whatever was necessary for our dance had already been accomplished. And at that point, I got to meet the Jamie that these guys knew from the very beginning. And man, let me tell you, in an age of empowering females, that woman has got it down. She is an empowered female. She's bright, she's sharp, she's self-deprecating, she's bad to the bone. She does not suffer fools gladly, but she doesn't take herself so seriously. And you know, the crazy thing is, she really doesn't think she's a beautiful woman. I'm like, oh, you're so crazy. She is such a beautiful woman. And personally, for myself, I have to say, it was a tremendous honor to work with a woman, like Chris said, a woman whose filmography is so deep and who's so accomplished and just knows every nuance. And I got to tell you, man, when we fought, that woman kicks like a mule. So does this one here. But Jamie took hits that, like, I don't mean this in a sexist way, but you expect a 240-pound guy to take a punch or a kick different than a 100-pound woman. This woman would hit the ground. At one point in a scene that we didn't use, she was going to knock a knife out of my hand with the butt of a rifle. And I was like, oh man, this is a little risky, because normally this is why you have a stunt person, a person who's going to hit the same mark every time and not break your hand. So the first time she swung, she hit the blade, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Man, 35 takes, she hit the same part on the knife every single frickin' time. That woman is just, there aren't enough superlatives to speak to the respect I have for that woman.
And she's married to Christopher Guest.
Yeah, one of the funniest guys on the planet,
Christopher
right?
Guest.
Come on. And she lives in a castle.
Original director John Carpenter was on board as an executive producer. Of course, he co-wrote the music as well. He was also on the set, but for not that long. Did any of you have any interactions with the man who started it all?
I did. Can I tell you? Please. I've worked with John a couple of times. I worked with him on Ghosts of Mars and a couple other things, and know his wife. And there's lovely people, and John is John, and so he came to set. He was sitting, I was upstairs, and you were doing the scene, the closet scene or something, maybe? Yeah, it was the closet scene. We were in the closet. And so I'm upstairs, we're doing the mask and on and off, and Ryan goes, hey, John's downstairs. You should go say hi to him, show him the mask. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So we had a break. I ran downstairs with the mask, behind my thing. I'm like, hey, John. He's like, hello, young man. How are you? I'm like, good, blah, blah, blah. We're talking. And I go, hey, you want to see the mask? He goes, yeah. And I hold it up. I go, what do you think? He goes, looks like shit. And I was like, sweet. If it was any other answer, I knew he's lying. Like, that's John. Like, but it was super cool. And I love it. That was most of my interaction. And then he asked me what hotel I was staying at, and I told him, and he goes, yeah, they put guys like you there. So that was cool. I'm like, cool, this is going well. So.
Yeah, I have a funny story with John as well. So I was just watching a couple of the scenes being filmed, and John waltzes along and sits down next to me, and he says, hello, I hear in the film. And I said, yeah, I play Dana Haines. And he's like, oh, so do you die? And I said, yeah, quite tragically actually. And he said, well, do you scream? And I went, yeah. And he's like, well? I said, well, what? And he goes, well, show me your scream. I thought, bloody hell, all right, I can't not scream for John Carpenter. So I just let out this horrendous scream, and everyone had to stop filming. And David goes, what was that? And I was like, it was John, he made me do a scream. I was like, oh, okay, it was John. So that was quite a funny moment. And then he went, yeah, it was good. And then he left. I was like, oh, man.
All I'll say about John is he's a salty old dog. I had a nice long conversation with him. We know a few people in common. I knew his son when his son was a child. One of my best friends dated Adrienne after they split. So I knew Cody when he was a kid. And it's funny. His wit is so acerbic. He can't he can't deny himself the opportunity to push a button when he sees one. And I think he's funny as hell and an immense talent. So it was such an honor to have him out there. And he didn't throw his weight around. He was just out there to be supportive and be a part of the game.
Hey, how about some questions from you guys for our great panel? Anybody?
Nobody
Yeah, over
has
here.
any questions?
Just one.
Can you do the scream?
Are you kidding me? Only for you.
Okay, who else we got out there? Questions. Don't be shy, don't be shy. Okay, on the left there, go ahead. Talk about the design of the mask. What made you choose that? Did you say what made him choose that design?
Sure. I don't know what made me choose it. It really wasn't based on it kind of evolved in a way. I had a great crew. I can't take 100% credit for that mask. I mean, there were so many people involved and factors involved of how it got to where it got, and it was very organic, and that's what we wanted it to be. Design-wise and where I wanted it to go, I had everything to do with that, and I wanted it to look different in every shot, and I padded it different. Remember, I was always taking pads out and putting pads in because I wanted it to kind of evolve throughout the film, kind of like the first one did. But it happened with, we were supposed to do a 1978 section of it, I think at the beginning of the movie, right? Wasn't that it? We were supposed to do 1978
Yes.
section. And so I brought in a really talented guy, Justin Mabry, who came in and sculpted a 1978 version. And so then, and this is at Vincent Van Dyke's. I had a great team in Vincent Van Dyke Effects and myself, and I have to say I stayed up at night laboring over the thought of where this mask was going to go, along with, of course, a ton of input from David Gordon Green, and lying in bed going, how do we do this how do we age it without making it look like the Rob Zombie mask, which is a beautiful mask that Wayne Toth did, but have its own thing, but still capture the 1978 silhouette and the blankness of it, but still add David, we wanted to add a little bit of tragedy to it because of the time and the age and the tone and the context of the film. There's a lot of thought put into this and hands, and so we took the 78 version, which we ended up not shooting, and took that and then kind of warped it and added that tragedy and changed it and opened up the eyes and kind of drooped them and added all the texture in the thing. And I get a lot of shit online from people going, that's not how latex ages, you're an idiot. I'm like, okay, let's all take it easy. It's like, there's a thing called cinematic license. If I were to age it or make it look like the original now or the way it actually happens, the audience I would be crucified, because you wouldn't like that either. It just doesn't work that way. You have to give it some character, and you have to take some cinematic license, and we did the best we could. And I sculpted on it in Vincent Van Dyke, and we aged it. I painted all of them, and I tried to give it a paint job that had a lot of layers, i.e. the context of the character, and there's a lot of thought put into it, and I think we did the best job we could. I think we got close to it, and also trying to stay true to the original mask. I mean, that's what everyone wanted to see. That's for years, right? I mean, that's what we've all wanted, and so we did the best we could, and then hopefully, I think it turned out okay. So, does that answer your question? I don't know.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Right over here.
Can you talk about working with Danny McBride as a writer?
Talk about working with Danny McBride as a writer. On the new
Well, I got to say, when I first met him was the night that Chris flew in from Los Angeles with two masks in his Halliburton, and so we were setting up. We had been rehearsing the long tracking shot, so we were in that neighborhood, and Attila, the first AD, let everybody know that Chris was bringing the mask in to show us. So we all went back to this room in the back of a house, and that's the first time I met Danny and Jeff Fradley, the two writers. And so I walked over there and introduced myself, and I was struck immediately. Well, first of all, I complimented him on the subtle humor in the script, because when I read it, I was really moved by the writing style and how subtly they would use humor to set up the horror and the balance of the script. And it was ingenious writing. I thought it was really really smooth. And I have to say this about Danny. You know, back in the day when I first got to Hollywood, I hung out with one of my dearest friends was a comedian, and I got to know, and I hung out a lot with Sam Kinison and Dysandra Clay, and I knew Robin Williams, and like a lot of comedians. And comics, by and large, will compete for laughs, and they're not really listening. Danny McBride is a funny son of a bitch, but he listens to every word that everybody says, and he's a great audience. If you say something funny, he's going to give you, man. He's going to give you his laugh. He's going to give you that joy. He doesn't need to compete with anybody. He just is. He's just naturally who Danny McBride is. And I think that comes out in the script, his genuine nature. And of course, if you know anything about comics, you know that everybody who has comic sense, it's really about the irony of life and the pain of life and how we deal with the pain in life. So, and I mean, dude, he's Irish, you know, so, I mean, come on, man, you know, he's got a dark soul. There's larceny somewhere in there too.
Yeah. I met him, that was the first time I met him, was that night. The first time we put the mask on, and one thing, I don't know him very well, but I mean, I talked to him, and he's a lovely man and super funny, and he's a huge Halloween fan, man, and he knows this movie. He knows it better than any of us, trust me, and he loves it, and he's passionate about it, and we put the mask on for the first time. Honestly, we had tears in our eyes. I'm not kidding you. We were all looking at each other like, oh, Christ.
No, when I put that mask on, it was a collective,
I mean, we didn't know if it was going to work. This was the first time. And we were like, I hope this works.
Yeah, first time. And so I was standing back in the frame of a door. Chris was right across from me, and then lined up was Jeff and Danny, David, Ron Hutchinson, the casting director, Attila, Jeff and Danny, and Chris walked up and helped me put the mask on, and then and as he put it on, that's when everybody just went, whoa. And it was just, and I can tell you this, the moment Christopher put that mask on me, and I already knew the space that I had created for the shape to exist inside me, but the circuit had never been completed until that mask went on in that moment. And when Christopher Nelson put that mask on me that very first time, the circuit was connected, and it changed something inside me. And that change, that feeling I had was the exact same feeling that I walked with every single freaking day. Starting with sitting in Chris's trailer and doing the special effects makeup to set up for the day. That was an amazing moment. That's one of the top moments of my film career, is that night when that moment happened.
And keep your chin down.
Yeah, this fucking guy. No, he was beautiful because Christopher, I mean, all right, talk about somebody else who knows this film and knows the character. So Christopher was always there with me because we had to make sure that, the mask and, all this. So, and he'd always remind me because, the mask would change, it was hot and sweaty. And so sometimes I'd lift my chin up just so I could see, so I could get and Chris would always, keep your chin down, man. Keep your chin down. So I'd have to he must have said 1,000 times, James, keep your chin down. Keep your chin down.
So annoying.
I know. You're lucky I didn't kill you.
Do we have a question in the front here? How did you feel when you had to do the murder scene?
Oh man, killing is so much fun. It's the most fun in the world. Oh my God. Step up. No, I'm not gonna. No, because then you'd be dead. And see, and the sad thing about that is I'd go to jail this time. I could do that and not go to jail. It's a very, very deep place, to be honest with you. If a person is really in touch with, as an actor, if you're really in touch with murder, it's very sexual. And I learned that in the very first film I did, which was a not so popular film. And called Freeway Maniac, and so I went and stayed in a psych ward in Central California for a weekend, and I had a doctor with me, a psychiatrist, several orderlies, and I actually spent nights there. I was sleeping in a ward with schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenics, and it was a criminal ward. But these guys were all doing the Thorazine shuffle. I mean, these guys were they couldn't catch a fly if they wanted to. They were so drugged up. But I got to interview some of the guys who had murdered 20 years ago and had had time to process it and had gone through therapy. And then they taught me how I would create dominance in the ward and how what the pathos was. So when I started killing in this movie, I called the psychiatrist up and I went, Doc, there's something going on here and I really need to talk to you about it. He goes, yeah, what? And I said, well, when I'm killing these people, I've got a freaking erection. And he goes, oh, I forgot to tell you. We forgot to talk about this. I'm so sorry. Yeah, during Vietnam firefights, these guys have multiple orgasms. I'm like, oh, but dude, I mean, you could have helped me out with that. You know what I mean? So, the point is, if you're going to kill people, you need to be prepared for that. Maybe bring a little protection.
So what does each of you have coming next, movie-wise, TV show-wise? Starting with Rhian, what are some of the upcoming projects?
I was allowed to say, but I'm sworn to blooming secrecy.
Confirm or deny?
No comment.
Hey, Christopher.
I'm doing a trilogy horror film called Fear Street, which is based off the R.L. Stein novels, the guy who did Goosebumps for 20th Century Fox. So we just started shooting the first one. We're doing all three back to back. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
And James?
There's something in the works that I'm not allowed to talk about, and there's also I'm producing a film, so I've been dealing with some European German financing, and it's one of those overnight things. Like I started working on this 12 years ago, but it's been very well received, and I'm really excited to have the experience of what it takes to produce a film, to write a film, which is a complete bloodletting if you do it decently. And I was blessed enough to work with a script consultant who was named Tom Schlesinger, who was Joseph Campbell's right-hand man for 10 years. And when I met Tom, he was so complimentary of the script. We only did one meeting, but he just wanted to show me how to create little pearls, little verticalities in the character with one word here and a sentence there, and we didn't change anything. But the process of writing, and then the process of dealing with all the departments and putting together budgets and dealing with financing and putting my left brain hat on has been very beneficial to me, because I think the platform created here, there's so much possibility, and it would really be a shame to waste the opportunity. And so I'm really accelerating my career in terms of my writing and producing, ultimately directing, but I'm not worried about that right now. And then, as far as being in front of the camera, I'm only doing it when I'm not pursuing it. So I'm only doing it when I'm being called, and then when I'm called, then my attorney and agent, they sort of go over what I'm being offered, and we kind of make a decision from there. But I'm staying busy, so it's good.
All right, let's hear it for Rhian, Christopher, and James. James and Rhian have tables outside where they'll be signing autographs. Stay tuned for our next panel. Again, Halloween 2018, best in the series since the original. Let's hear it for the gang one more time.